Greetings, conversationalists. Welcome. It is Erick Erickson here across the United States of America this fine Monday. The phone number, if you want to be on the program, 877-973-7425. Text Erick, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777. You can get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, all the social media links. Well, obviously, we've got an obvious place we have to start today. The cover-up of Joe Biden. His team seems to do themselves no favors. First of all, let me say this out of the gate. You should pray for Joe Biden. So I was in church on Sunday, and actually our sermon was on Matthew 5 and love your neighbor and your enemy, pray for your enemies. And I've seen a number of people on the right online say, I'm not saying a kind word about that man after what he did. You can say whatever that you want to say about that and call me whatever you want. I was like, well, I'll call you a pagan, not a Christian, because, the post-Christians are worse. The ones who say, well, I'm going to pray for Joe Biden, but I'm going to pray that he burns in hell. Those are the ones who call themselves Christians. They say they're praying for him, but they're going to find themselves actually in a hotter place than the pagans who just aren't going to pray for him. The ones who are praying against him, or they're setting the conditions, I'm going to pray for Joe Biden, but I'm only going to pray in this particular way, that he repents and recognizes all the terrible things. You're not actually doing what the commandment says. You got to pray for Joe Biden. The man has a serious, advanced, aggressive prostate cancer. And at his age, at 82, honestly, the best treatment is palliative care. That is, keep him comfortable, treat the symptoms. He's probably not long for the world. It is sad. A family is losing a husband and a father. Some of you will just want to wish him ill, and you shouldn't. If you identify yourself, if you say you're a Christian, you can't do that as much as you want to. That's a sin. At the same time, what the Democrats are doing, though, is say, well, now we can't have the discussion about the cover-up because, the man's got aggressive cancer. Out of respect for him, we should shut up the conversation. No, you people want to shut up the conversation because you don't want to be held accountable. The conversation is not actually about Joe Biden. It's about you people now saying we can't talk about it because you are the ones who covered up for a man who has dementia. In fact, the only honest person in this whole thing is Joe Biden, who told us in 2022 he had cancer.
And because it was a 4-lane highway that was accessible, my mother drove us, and rather than us be able to walk. And guess what? The first frost, you know what was happening? You had to put on your windshield wipers to get literally the oil slick off the window. That's why I and so damn many other people I grew up have cancer. And why can't, for the longest time, Delaware had the highest cancer rate in the nation.
That's why I and so many of the people I grew up with have cancer. And a lot of people say, wait a second, Joe Biden just said he had cancer. Is this right? And the White House, no, he misspoke. The man was reading from the teleprompter. He went off the cuff for that moment, and he said he had cancer. And then the White House denied it. It sounds like Joe Biden's been the only truth teller in the White House. Because if his prostate cancer is the level at which he says it is, he didn't get it after he left the White House. The president of the United States is more covered by more doctors and more regularly checked on than any other person on planet Earth. And there's just no way. This is Zeke Emanuel, Rahm Emanuel's brother, the guy who helped come up with Obamacare, on MSNBC.
Zeke, you're an oncologist, obviously. Incredibly respected. You believe that it is likely, just for those just tuning in, you believe it is likely, if this prostate cancer has spread to the bone, that he could have had it for up to a decade, but certainly it's likely. Would it be fair to say it's likely to have had this for at least several years?
Oh, more than several years. You don't get prostate cancer.
So I just want to stop you. So this is not speculation. If you have prostate cancer that is spread to the bone, then he's most certainly, you were saying, had it when he was president of the United States.
Oh yeah. He did not develop it in the last 100, 200 days. He had it while he was president. He probably had it at the start of his presidency in 2021. Yes, that I don't think there's any disagreement about that.
There isn't any disagreement about that. That's Zeke Emanuel, who's considered a healthcare expert and an oncologist, saying he probably had it at the beginning of his term. So that's how extensive the lie was from the Biden White House about the president's health. This is Dr. Gupta, not CNN's Dr. Gupta. This is the poor man's Dr. Gupta, the MSNBC version, talking about same thing.
It is interesting to note that President Trump's, President Obama's, and President Bush II, in their most recent physicals, in their terms of office, obviously 2025 for President Trump, did comment on their PSA levels. And so they got screened while in office and they commented on it. It's not easy to access the most recent ones from President Biden. You can read the summary articles. I couldn't access it on the archive site on the White House just before I came on. But according to those that were able to, there is not a report of a PSA test on the most recent physical that was read out for President Biden's last year in office.
One more from Zeke Emanuel on this cover-up.
It is surprising he did not get this test, given the fact that the proclivity of presidential physicians is test more rather than less. And I think it's a little strange. We do know from the population, like I said, 7% of people diagnosed with prostate cancer get it diagnosed at the metastatic moment, when it's already metastatic. So it's not unusual that people can say, no, I don't want the test, or their doctor doesn't recommend it, or they don't get the test for one reason or another.
But not the president of the United States of America. Again, George Bush had the PSA test, Barack Obama, Donald Trump. Only Joe Biden, really at his age, only Joe Biden. It boggles the mind. But you know how some people in the media are treating it. Listen to this conversation. This is Brian Stelter, who's one of the chief fluffers and apologists in this whole scandal on CNN.
That as one element of the timing here. And then you have, as you and Paul just acknowledged, this book coming out, one of the biggest political books in several years. Take out our colleague Jake Tapper for a second. This book, no matter where it was coming from, was going to be a very big blockbuster book. And it just so happens two of the best reporters in Washington, Jake Tapper and Alice Thompson, are the authors of it. It's already a bestseller based on the number of pre-orders. And so this book comes out in 2 days, but some of the excerpts have already come out, and it's reignited this debate in Washington and beyond within the Democratic Party about Biden, about whether he should have run for re-election at all. So it seems to me, Jessica, this debate doesn't end at all, but it is briefly put on pause as a result of today's news.
Briefly put on pause, except that's Brian Stelter after some reflection. And this is Brian Stelter. Just listen to this this morning on CNN, talking about the fallout of Joe Biden. I don't have the video on this one. I have the audio.
I'm seeing some prostate cancer survivors, people who have lived with this disease, who have been through this, expressing support, both condolences, but also support and cheering Biden on as he faces this. The timing, Jessica, is just extraordinary. We know from the statement from his personal spokesman that Biden learned of the diagnosis on Friday. Well, what was the biggest Biden story on Friday? It was the release of those audio excerpts from his conversations with Robert Hur back in 2023. This was the audio that Axios obtained, almost certainly from the Trump administration, showing memory lapses. And you heard a lot of people on Friday talking about that audio being hard to hear, even excruciating to hear. Biden showing his age on those audio tapes that had never been heard by the public until now. So on the day that story was breaking, Biden was facing this personal news. At least that's according to the statement from his personal spokesman.
At least according to only Brian Stelter, he and Oliver Darcy, the only two people who would treat this with a straight face. Really, even Zeke Emanuel on Morning Joe on MSNBC says this is not plausible. On Friday, the Robert Hur audio comes out. And it shows, it doesn't appear to validate concerns about Joe Biden's age and memory. It actually validates those concerns. It was painful and excruciating to hear. The man didn't know where he was. He didn't know. It wasn't that he didn't remember dates. He didn't remember basic facts. He didn't remember names. He got completely confused. He was combative like someone with Alzheimer's. And the media covered that up. The media participated in that. And you know, this news about Biden actually gives the media a golden opportunity to attempt some level of redemption where they can pursue the cover-up of his health, because that's one thing they wouldn't have known. They didn't participate in it. They could obviously see his mental decline, and they chose to cover that up. They couldn't see his prostate, you hope. And there's no way they could have known. Therefore, they can say, we had nothing to do with this, and they cover this up. The president of the United States has had cancer and didn't go through treatment. He clearly didn't go through treatment. And he's been president. Why? Here's the wild thing here for all of you Democrats listening, and I know you're listening. You can't help it yourself. You realize it was the Biden team and the journalists of America who got Donald Trump elected. I mean, yeah, it was the voters, but ultimately it was the Democrats. The indictments about Donald Trump drove up his popularity and consolidated the Republicans and allowed him to fundraise. The cover-up of Joe Biden kept Joe Biden into the race far longer than he should have stayed in the race. He then dragged his feet for 6 weeks before getting out and then handed it over to Kamala Harris, who both Barack Obama and Nancy Pelosi were privately warning Democrats didn't have what it took to beat Trump. The Biden team, you should want the answers. Instead, it's remarkable the number of prominent Democrats say, oh, you have to pray for Joe Biden and stop asking questions. Don't ask questions. No questions allowed. Stop asking. How dare you, Ghoul? You'll have this backfire on you. Being cruel to an 82-year-old with aggressive cancer. It's not being cruel to Joe Biden. We should pray for Joe Biden. But what did Jill Biden know and when did she know it? What did Hunter Biden know and when did he know it? What did the White House Chief of Staff know and when did he know it? What did the White House press secretary know and when did she know it? What did the congressional leadership know and when did they know it? What did Joe Biden's White House physician know and when did he know it? We should be asking these questions about all of these people. How dare they be allowed to get on television? As I said last week, you know and I know, any Republican who goes on television is demanded to account for, was the 2020 election stolen, and what do you think of January 6th? When are we going to see the Democrats go on television and say, what do you think about the Joe Biden cover-up? What about the cabinet secretaries who want to run for president? What about Pete Buttigieg? What about Kamala Harris? They can all say, we had no idea. Someone did, because someone knew not to get or release the PSA exam while Joe Biden was president. You're going to say he's a kind and honorable man in contrast to Donald Trump? No, he lied. He lied. He covered up his condition, and he actually got Donald Trump reelected. You must ask these questions. The press has a golden opportunity to attempt some redemption without ever having to have accountability. And by the way, they should have accountability. They need the accountability, but this is their golden opportunity to be aggressive on this point to try to figure out how long did Joe Biden have the cancer? Why didn't he get the PSA test done? Where is Joe Biden's doctor asking questions? Where are the questions to be asked? There are lots of them, and the Democrats don't want to give any of them to you. This has been a profound cover-up. It went not just now we know to mental decline, but also his physical decline with cancer. And it is not a coincidence that they timed the announcement to come out when the Her report dropped. They knew it was going to get dropped. The moment Donald Trump got elected, they knew it was going to get dropped, and they timed the announcement of prostate cancer to suck all the oxygen out of the room. So you're not going to go revisit the Her tapes. It requires us to revisit the conversation with Robert Hur that this timing, this announcement was clearly timed to try to get you to stop looking at.
Have something to say? Hello. Call the show. 1-877-9